about a year and a half after Clint's accident, and I was struggling with going back to work. But I always remember that Clint said, I don't want you working. I want you home with our boys. I want you here. I was sought out for a lawsuit. I didn't go seeking it, but I was sought out for a lawsuit. There was a lawsuit involved in the accident in my favor, which set up trust funds for my boys so they could go to college, so their dad could pay. Maybe I'm a little sick and twisted, but I saw it as their dad paying for their college because that was so important to him, education. God took care of that. It had been my prayer, God, how am I going to do this? How am I going to take care of all their needs? But each time I would cry out to him, maybe not immediately, but pretty quick, he would answer my prayer. If it was through people or just giving me the knowledge to look into something. And once again, remember my mom said I wasn't real bright? Do you remember that? She regrets that statement to today because I reminded her of that. Get it from your people, remember? But every need, every time that I would just cry out to him, and I tried it on my own. I tried to be the one to find all the answers, to seek it out. Without really turning to God, that didn't work too well. Hit a bunch of dead ends on that road. And I'm pretty hard-headed with things. So that's what I have to say is the only way that I have survived 16 years later to this day is like I told Melissa, it's when I'm on my knees. That's when I get my strength, and that's when I know that God is saying, yes, my child, I love you and I am taking care of you. I gave you these sons for a purpose and for a reason, and we're raising them together. So as I watched my oldest graduate college this year, and he's gainfully employed, we're all happy about that, and I watched him walk across the stage, and when they announced his name, I cried like a baby. Because he's a junior, he's Clinton Douglas Shelton Jr. But I just knew that God's grace, God's provision, God's hand was right there as CJ walked across and got his diploma, and that we had done this together. We had fought the fight, my 3 sons, me, and God. That's the only way you can survive. That's the only way you can get through each day. That's all I'm going to say.
Talk to me a little bit about your seasons of grieving. We've talked some on kind of those cornerstones, and we even talked the other day of how you can see Clint in every child.
Oh, absolutely.
But your seasons of grieving, have they lessened as far as amounts of grieving periods and things like that? What does that look like?
That has changed. Everybody tells you time heals, and time does heal to a certain degree. You never forget. I believe there will always be Clint with me and a part of me that will not be whole again because that particular time in my life and the specialness of it all. Because remember, I wasn't going to get married and I wasn't going to have kids. And once again, God said, you're getting married, you're having kids, see? And the grieving, yes, as time has gone on, it has lessened. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think of Clint in some way. Each of my boys has different mannerisms of his that blow me away because they haven't been around him in 16 years, but they'll do facial expressions or they'll say things like, where'd you get that? How did you hear that? How did you know that? And it just amazes me. My grieving times come when, like, my son graduated, and I knew Clint couldn't be there to see the graduation because I know how thrilled he would be that his son is a coach now. When they became Christians and when they got baptized, those were other times that were so precious that I desired to have, because nobody else on this planet loves those boys like the mom and dad do, whether you're together or apart. There's no two people that love, and I hated that for my boys. That's where my hurt now comes more, that my boys don't have that, their dad. My middle son now says, Mom, I can't wait to get married so I can be the dad that I never really got to have or never really got to know. That's where my hurt comes. For me, because I was loved by him, and it was a very special love. He didn't have enough time to get tired of me. We were only married not quite 8 years when he was killed, and we had 3 kids, 7 for God, because the times when we were together, just the 4 of us, I would talk about how God is taking care of us, how he is providing us for us, and how he will continue to do so. I have, when they were young, I would tell them they'll see their dad again in heaven, because that seemed to give them some hope. I wanted them to have hope, that they would see their dad again in heaven, to know, and that gives me hope, that I'm going to see him again. And I'm going to look young.
Because you're going to be fully healed and
I'm
whole.
fully healed.
Yes.
Well, not fully perfect.
I can tell we have to bleep that a lot.
I told you.
Hey, how old were you when you became a widow? What was your age?
I was 31. I was 31, unemployed, hadn't been employed in a long time, didn't have a college degree, just real unsure, when the dust settled and the funeral was over and everybody went back to their normal life. That was a scary time. But I knew that my job was to be at home with my sons. And God provided. He provided through ways that I would have never. Some friends of mine from high school got together, and for a month they would send me money. One guy in particular would take all the donations. He was my high school sweetheart, and he would send me a check each month. They all came for the funeral. He would send me a check each month. He did that for a year, and he did that for a year, and then 2 months later he died of a sudden heart attack. And that's what I was telling Kelly earlier, I think. Clint and I had gone to a marriage counselor just to try to figure some things out, being a young married couple with a bunch of kids. A year after Clint died, our counselor died. And it's like every man in my life that meant something to me, passed away. So there was a weirdness there for me. I wanted a man for my boys. I have a brother that has a problem with being in prison. So he couldn't be there to be a dad for my boys. My husband's father went into a deep depression, so he couldn't be around. So that's when, like every man in your life and that's when God had to step up and not only be the comforter and healer, but the father. The father in a way more than just, a real time, here's where you go for your problems, here's where you go for your answers.
So did you have nights of fear?
Many.
And how did you do that?
A lot of crying, a lot of praying. Falling asleep a lot of times with my Bible, reading scriptures, and just crying out.
We talked, in the book of Ruth, we talked about it some last week, and I even introed with it, of how transformation happens with tragedy. And one thing that I heard you just say, even at the beginning, is it sounds like you even had a portion of transformation immediately of being not a woman of prayer and not a woman on your knees to immediate, leaning on the work of the Holy Spirit in your life.
Now, I pray, but I only pray at the right times. Before meals, devotion. But yes. After that, when I was on my knees, I'm so about being on your knees now. I'm so about prayer all the time. That transformed me so much. Also, what changed in me was that I was not in control of my life. I really was not, because I always thought I was, that I could control it all. No, I was not in control, and that's a good thing. I came to know that letting go and surrendering, and sometimes that surrendering is hourly, because still my flesh rises up and wants to take over and say, I can do this on my own. So it's surrendering daily, and that was not me before. Before I was very staunch that I could handle whatever. I could say my prayer, but then I'd take care of it. Well, yeah, that was a transformation.
Did you ever ask or question or be angry with God and ask why?
I did.
What did that look like?
Well, the asking why was, like I said, why my husband, the good man, why not the drug dealer? I think I shared with you the verse in Isaiah 57, 1 and 2. I found that verse one night in my praying and crying out that talks about God taking the righteous, and that we don't understand that they find peace and rest. And so that gave me peace. I don't know how many times I read that verse. And it made me relax to know that I'm not supposed to know all the answers. And that was a hard one for me too. That was another transformation. Because I'm the kind of person that if I have a question, even if my mom said I wasn't very smart, I wanted to know the answer to stuff. And that was, I had to give up on that. Because I did have the anger on why, and finally, as time has gone by, I had found out there's not a need now to know why. It was God's will. That was the plan. And I'm to that point now where I'm okay with that. I can't say that I still fully understand it, but I'm okay with that.